Alexis, thanks for joining me again. We're here for episode 2 already. I'm very excited. How are you doing today?
Hi, Chris. Thank you for having me again. I'm very excited, actually. And as I was saying just before, if the state of the metaverse keeps going as it's going now, maybe we're only going to be down to two very skinny episodes because not much is happening in the metaverse. And as a matter of fact, we are the one who's making stuff. So let's make up some stuff. Let's make up one more episode. Also, let's try not to bash on whoever is there to try to do something of the likes of Meta, Decentraland, Sandbox, to name a few. We're definitely going to mention as well the good ones, right? Because there's a lot of video games out there that are seemingly like Metaverse, which we're also going to mention. But yeah, I think you pack up episode 2 with quite a few topics. Yeah.
Yeah, well, look, I think what you've said there, right? The metaverse has definitely been getting a bit of a kicking in the last week, 2 weeks. There's a lot of negative sides to the story, and some of it is understandable. I still think we are early. I still think the technology hasn't caught up with the dreams, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But there's definitely been a huge negative kind of spin on the majority of the news. So I think we'll jump in with our first topic today. What is going on at Meta? It's a
Yep.
crazy landscape at the moment. Zuckerberg has been mocked tirelessly for how bad Horizons looked the first time when there was like a small Eiffel Tower in the background. The fact that basically everyone is legless for no reason, we don't understand why, and and the fact that obviously he spent, I think, $36 billion to date on this idea of metaverse.
So no, I was saying I think he's getting bashed just because the number is so big, right? I mean, $36 billion. They're probably quite a fair bit of money to spend in schools, infrastructure, healthcare, other than building like a legless metaverse that nobody wants. Even though I think he was capitalizing on the fact that working from home was going to be a thing, and eventually it is not
Oh,
as much a thing
Alexis.
as well we all hoped. Lucky for me, I am working from home from today. This is home, and yeah, I think whatever he would do, Zuckerberg, it would be bashed anyway, right? So now my question is the real question I have, Chris. Let's have a debate about this. You go on and spend $40 billion, okay, to rebrand a very successful company that has already you know basically cornered the whole entire web space, let's say. All right, so web space and social web space. Okay, you go on to the exercise with a vision and you go like, okay, you know what, all in metaverse. You must have a plan B and a plan C. Okay, $40 billion, it's a large chunk of money. This guy, as ruthless as he was depicted on the social network movie, whatever he is, I don't know, but I don't think he's a dummy. Okay, so something must come about. All right, he must have a plan. Something's gonna happen at some point. So where's the Black Swan event? What do you think? You think he's banking on the metaverse that's going to be like a fun, loving universe for people to play and socialize, or is it going to be like a workspace as is intended it to be?
I think there's a couple of things here. So, one, Facebook has become so big, and it already was before they did the rebranding. As a company, it then owned Instagram, it then owned WhatsApp, it was then building a hardware division with the Quest and Oculus that they then took over. They do a lot of things, and they're not just the Facebook platform anymore. So I think there was always this idea of kind of creating that parent branding that could then encompass everything. I think as well, what's important, yes, they hit the meta thing. I think it worked really well around the idea of metaverse, but meta is just like a prefix, right? It's something that we throw in front of other words as well. So a metaverse then becomes what we talk about, these amazing worlds that are a bit like ours, but better and in the digital realm. But I think as well, if you look at it from a point of view as just a word, I think it could be more encompassing than that. It's a great way for them to sort of have that top level that could end up being metaverses, could end up being metaplexes, could end up being meta whatever they decide they want to do next, right?
Yeah, good point. So I don't think it's quite as fair as everybody is thinking it is to bash them so hard. I think we should give them a little bit of time as well, as you mentioned before. Yes, it's a bit early. Yes, 36 billion is quite a lot, but you know what? I'd like to give them benefit of the doubt. So far, they've known for creating some very exciting products that people want, right? So let's give them some time. Again, it's not because I just say that tomorrow Zuckerberg is gonna call me and go like, "Oh, thank you very much. We're gonna pursue the venture," right? But I think it's easy to give them grief. Again, I believe $36 billion is a large number, should have been deployed for other nice ESG initiatives. But that's Meta. They want to build something that is, the next iteration of the internet. So let's give them some credit there.
You've got to remember as well, love them, hate them, anything else, it doesn't matter. There's two things I think that are really important. One, Meta represents like 3 billion monthly active users across all platforms. This is crazy, right? It's nearly half of the world. And in fact, if you take away really young children and really old people that don't use technology, they
It's a whole
probably do
world.
have more than half of everyone, right? So that's the first thing to remember. I think the second thing as well, whether they've got this play right yet, the technology is still advancing. If Oculus wasn't pushing hard to get out things like the Quest 2 that, I bought one. It was $300. It's a standalone unit. It works without having to be connected to anything other than Wi-Fi. It doesn't need cables. They didn't need an expensive PC.
Pretty
So
cool though. Pretty
it's
cool
huge.
piece of
Yeah, yeah,
gear.
it's very cool. But you imagine if you had talked to me as a kid 10 years ago, or sorry, 10 years ago, that's a lie, 30 years ago, and told me I was going to one day own one of them, right? I would have been like that. Oh my God, that would be mind blowing. So the fact that we're getting there, if companies like this, and there's lots of others, there's Hive, there's Valve, there's a few others that are trying to create kit like this. So I think that's the key thing. And then the last piece is as well, Facebook is a very, very, very big, or Meta now, very, very big company that is publicly traded. Every time somebody creates this FUD, as we call it in the Web3 industry, but as soon as they start putting out this fear and uncertainty and doubt around the brand, the share prices collapse. Now, if you look back over the last year for Facebook, this massive thing of, oh my God, Zuckerberg's lost his mind. Oh my God, like, he spent so much money. Oh my God, they're going to have to cut staff. Every big tech company
Which they
has cut
did.
staff. Yeah, every big company has cut staff. But if you look at where the share price was, and I can tell you this almost like, not to the date, but at least in terms of values, the share price has more than doubled since it hit its lowest lows last year. And I know
Yeah.
this because when I saw that people had suddenly valued Facebook as a group, Meta as a company, as a group, at less than $350 million, you think, sorry, $350 billion, you think to yourself, this is insanity. You have
Yeah.
more than half of the world using their platforms every single month. How are you going to tell me that it's not worth more than that?
Of course, I agreed. I agreed. That was definitely a buy. I agree with you. Definitely. Now, what's quite interesting here is to look at a little bit of, okay, Meta has that many users every day, but not. I mean, I'm a Meta user. Okay, I've never I've never peered into their metaverse. I didn't even tried. So what happened there?
Yeah, there's an issue there. I think,
They should have, and they should have appealed to me. They should have appealed to me so very well that this transition, as soon as I log in Facebook, Instagram, whatnot, I should have, an option to go like, hey, would you like to go in? Do you wanna dive in? And at no moment that was addressed. Okay, and I think that was the point of failure. Now that's a good segue, I believe, in what we wanted to discuss next as well. There's this lack of communication from all these metaverses. I mean, you building cool shit. Well, speak about it. Let people know about this. I mean, Meta is the perfect example where they already have a fan base available, ready. I mean, they're already into the metaverse, like there. Just click that bloody button and bring me there, right? And that didn't happen.
there's two things here which are really interesting that you've brought up. And again, this is where you're right. Meta has really focused their play on the hardware element of the metaverse. So if you don't have one of their headsets, you're not going into it.
You out.
And I think there's something that they see as a long-term play when they get that right, and when it's a seamless transition, that when you put that on, it feels like you're in the real world, but you're not. That's going to be a game changer that is just going to be off the charts. You know, that's when we start thinking Ready Player One, etc. But the key problem is the reason I think they haven't let anybody access it with their mobile phone or through a browser is because then you get to the same position and the problem that we're currently having with things like Decentraland, where
That's
you
right.
can access it very quickly. But what's actually happening is a lot of people aren't accessing it. And again, our
Well,
view for
again,
this show is all
communication.
about not bashing people. So
No, no,
how
we're
do
not
you get
bashing
more
people, but
people
they
to
don't
actually come
communicate.
into it?
They don't communicate.
Yeah, and these things
If
don't
you don't
become big
communicate,
enough of a story. Yeah.
talk about the fashion week that happened in the Central End. Again,
Yeah,
this is
100%.
something we should have
100%.
seen, like,
Year
left, right, and
two.
center. I mean, brands that I like. Okay, there are some brands that I like that participated. I haven't heard, I haven't seen a message, nothing, and I am in the metaverse sort of industry, let's say, and I didn't hear so much about it. So there was definitely a lack of communication. I believe the numbers that came out of the attendance of this fashion week are not great, to be honest.
Yeah, Fashion Week shows. I think it was the Block that reported. I'm just checking the numbers as well to make sure I don't get this wrong. I think they reported around 26,000 people attending the various events online, and that's down like 76% from last year. Now, the hype as part of this as well, which I think is a big piece of the problem as well. The hype has died down. There's less people talking about this in general, and the conversations now are more like we talked about at the beginning of the episode. They're very much more focused on the negatives. It's the, oh, well, there's not a lot of people. Oh, well, there's not a lot of this. There's not a lot of that. And I think that's one of the key problems where we're not talking about, well, hang on a second, there are people trying to do cool shit. And this is a really important one. How do we get more people talking about the fact that, yeah, okay, fine, it might be down 76%, but actually, how many of those brands really pushed to make that kind of announcement? How many people talked about it
Exactly.
before it happened
Exactly.
to say what was happening? And how much of that stays away from the Web3 metaverse focused press and actually getting into the real line where right now everybody's talking about ChatGPT, AI, and Elon Musk's latest call for everyone to halt progress on AI until we understand how it works better. It's That's what the world is talking about. That's where money is flowing currently, and that means that the metaverse has been kind of left high and dry. Yeah, we put loads of money in, we believed in it for a short while, and then now the attention span has gone. We're not talking about it in the same way, and what happens as a result of that is less happening. I don't know. It seems that way a little bit.
Yeah, there's something very true in what you say, and I think stop me if you think I'm maybe diverging a little bit or going a too separate of a way, but I think the fact that metaverses are connected so much to NFTs and crypto, that was inherent bad publicity. So, for example, I think NFTs are phenomenal technology. Again, there's a cornerstone building block of metaverses. Okay, look at the NFT activity. It's down to nothing again. But and brands, they want to play the game of let's go on a metaverse. But why don't you play the game of NFTs? Oh, because that's attached to some shady sort of blockchain crypto narrative that they don't want to partake, and that's so wrong because it seems that blockchain is exactly built to transact assets on the metaverse. It couldn't be any better. As much as the credit card were never been built to, purchase stuff on the web, and that's the reason why there's so much fraud. Now you have finally a system that it's perfectly suited, to transact goods and assets on that digital realm. But they don't want to connect. And on top of that, you have all this ChatGPT AI distraction.
Well, I think it's really cool. Like, you're completely right. Right now, we've got NFTs as a technology. You and I have spoken about this at length offline, but we know how we feel about this. And I think we've got blockchain, crypto, NFTs, Web3, everything is thrown into the same pot, and it's very much not the case. But I think even more importantly, right now, blockchain, NFTs, etc., represent to me that shift of like in 2007 when Steve Jobs pulled the iPhone out of his pocket and everyone went, wow, that's super cool. But no one had a clue how to use it properly. And it took years before we started to see the advent of companies and the killer apps that came on it afterwards that really changed the way we do everything. Without that technological advancement, without having that ease and access, and without giving people those frameworks, we wouldn't have stuff like Uber, Airbnb, etc. Because Apple weren't the first people to create a touchscreen phone. They were the first company, sorry, to give you an environment where it was worth investing and worth getting involved in. So I think the blockchain and the NFT, once that's used for a particular use case, rather than just making money, or rather than people trying to get funds for a project before it's even started, etc., like the rest of the real world works, right?
Yeah.
We don't,
Yeah,
you don't
exactly.
usually walk up to people and say, can I have a load of money? I'm thinking of doing something cool later on in 2 years' time. But once you can actually look at it as a technology and you say, well, hang on a second, why do I own my car? Do I own my car because it's parked outside my house? Do I own my car because I have the keys to the car? Or do I own the car because actually I have a registration document that's issued by government that tells me that I own it? And now what we're talking about is your ownership, the digital ownership representation, and what that can be used for in NFTs is mind-boggling in the future, including the metaverse. I agree with you, but
Of course.
I think we have to get that away from people talking about it as a thing, NFTs, because NFTs are dead, and actually going, oh yeah, it's cool. Actually, I bought this really cool thing in this metaverse platform, like they do spend millions and millions of dollars every month on skins for Fortnite. There's a whole thing going on at the moment in CSGO where people are trying to get rare loot and they're selling it on for hundreds of dollars. It's a digital asset that means nothing, but there has no provenance and has no tracking record or anything else. We're just happy to let somebody else deal with it. So I think that's a huge game changer as well when we get that right and when we can differentiate away from the bad news and the bad press.
Yeah, it would be quite interesting to engage as well our audience to see if they come up with awesome killer apps that you like to see happening on the metaverse as well. Because I mean, I cannot think of any myself right now because I'm so engrossed into blockchain tokens, token sale and stuff like that. Because I think that technology is so awesome in that regard, right? But it would be quite interesting to hear it from our audience to see what is it they think would be that killer app of the metaverse, right? Let's see. It will be quite interesting.
Well, to jump on from that, so what are those killer apps and everything else? So let's have a chat about, and again, I'm interested in hearing this from your point of view. What do you consider, well, how should we consider a top metaverse? And I mean, what makes a top metaverse a top metaverse? What makes a metaverse even significant or important or successful? Like what for you makes a good digital environment that we can call a metaverse?
Okay, it's a bit of a philosophical question here. Okay, so I'm going to answer it with what I know of the British language. Okay, again, when you speak about metaverse, you speak about an augmented experience that, okay, for in that particular case is like a digital augmented experience. Okay, if I want a augmented digital experience, I would like to experience something that it's nothing like the real world. I mean, nothing is better than the real world, right? I mean, like sex or paragliding or scuba diving or, I mean, whatever. This is awesome experiences, okay? But if I ought to then jump into a metaverse and consider this as what makes it like the best experience, I want it to be fun. To me, if it's no fun, what's my incentive? What is it? And I don't need to earn anything from it. I need to have, my adrenaline kick. I need to have, my serotonin being tickled. It needs to be fun. It needs to be engaging. Something has to happen, right? And even more so, what I would consider being an outstanding metaverse, we had a quick chat about this. Imagine if tomorrow I go like, okay, I want to create an instantaneous metaverse that's going to last just, like for an hour or so. Like while we have this conversation, I plug in my NFTs, my AI, my stuff, and then like shake, and boom, for 1 hour we are in this like super fun, fear and loathing Las Vegas type of metaverse. Like for 1 hour we're having a blast. Okay, that would be a fun experience. So I would like it to be fun. Okay, that's what I think would be fun for me. Now, what would make it successful? Again, I think success comes from mass adoption, right? You need to have people. I need to have people that partake, that socialize, that can get something out of that experience, right? Making a new friend, getting a piece of information, if you want to do something for business, you could go attend an event or a token sale of a project that's going to be launched in 2 years, as you mentioned before. It has to be engaging, and people need to be there. Now, how do you get people there? Now, that's the $1 million question, right? Or as a matter of fact, the $36 billion question. So how you get them there,
That's definitely a
right?
$36 billion question that Mark Zuckerberg and his team have been trying to figure out.
Well, you ask me, and to me, what would make it successful is, I think if we were to aim to make it fun, and as you see, the metaverses that are fun are those that are game. Those are games. The games
I,
and
I
the games.
I agree with you. I think there's a huge problem at the moment as well of trying to make this a be all and end all of everything, and I don't think it works. I think this ends up being built niche, small communities, and you build that slowly but surely. But I also think that's the same case for gaming in general. Gaming used to have this kind of almost negative inclination to it, where if you spoke to someone who was a professional, they wouldn't tell you, oh, I'm also a gamer. Like at the weekends, I love to boot up the Xbox and play whatever it is. And I think that's changing now more and more. You can see it. I'm having conversations with people that are successful, running SaaS businesses, working in finance in the city, whatever it might be. And these people will say to you, like, yeah, actually, I love like playing the Xbox. I love playing this. I play that. And I think that's a really big key piece to this puzzle that whether we like to admit it or not, it's going to start with those gaming communities. If you can go somewhere, do something, and it's fun, enjoyable, and like you say, there's a whole sort of philosophical side of this, but psychological ways of hitting gamers. So, like you mentioned, your serotonin and everything else, but making sure people get hooked on those
You need to
experiences.
have a bit of escapism. Okay, that's I think the bottom line. The escapism needs to be real. Needs to be there. Okay,
100%.
so
100%. And in
that
fact,
will make it
actually,
successful.
if you've ever read like Ready Player One, sorry, or if you've watched the film, the book's much better, by the way. But if you've ever read it and you've watched the film, you see it as well. It's straight away. That's what the kid says. Like the real world is just not nice anymore. It's filled with war, famine, poverty. Like
Sounds
that's
about
why
sounds about sounds about right. Sounds
it's
about the
not
world
far.
we're living in, man.
So
Damn.
you can imagine why then everyone wants to put on this headset and be in an environment
Sure.
that, like you said, right? It's an augmented side of things. It's fun. It's nice. It's where you socialize. It's where you make your friends. It's where you meet people. So all of these things I think make a big difference. And I think again, that's going to be part of it. But one of the key things I did look at, and I did bring together some numbers for this as well, because I was trying to figure out how do we mark at success. So right now, if you do a Google search for metaverse, you look at the news, it basically is all negative. It's a very sad place to be reading. I try not to spend too much time
Yeah, but the same,
when I'm
the same goes,
researching.
the same goes for the world. If you like Google any news of the world, it's like quite of a sad place to live in, huh?
To be fair, it used to be more fun like a couple of years ago when it came to NFTs and metaverses. But so one of the key things I did look at here, so I was looking at like ApeCoin, Mana, Sand, so Decentraland and Sandbox's tokens as well. And I'm realizing that these guys still have a market cap of like ApeCoin, I think, is at 1.5 billion plus. The Mana is at like 1.1 billion for Decentraland, and Sandbox, the Sand token, I think is at about 950 million in terms of a market cap. And these numbers are huge. Like, let's be completely clear here. For tiny projects that, all you're reading about is there's no users, there's not enough people, Metaverse Fashion Week was down. Like, these companies and these token projects have not gone completely under. And I thought I would have a look as well at the land prices. So obviously
Yeah,
each
it's
of
still
these
expensive, huh?
projects have the
Expensive.
ability to buy land. And I realized again, like, these haven't completely lost their value, right? This isn't like a rug pull where,
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
no
yeah.
point in buying it, so therefore they're not worth anything. But I was looking at it, other deed, I think the floor price was about $2,000 when I looked just before we started recording. Decentraland was about $1,300 for a piece of land for the
Okay.
cheapest, and Sandbox about $900. So these are still values I think that are representative of quite premium product at this stage still. Like, you and I wouldn't pay $900 for a video game,
No,
but
for sure.
people are obviously still paying these sorts of numbers, and there is still a tiny bit of volume, not a huge amount like before. But what do you think of that?
Well, no, exactly. I think here we're piggybacking on that old notion of ownership, okay? Because obviously, uh, you know, metaverse is a land, it's land, right? But rather than charging money for a piece of land, what if you were to be charging money for an experience? right? For feeling, right? I mean, that could be quite interesting actually, because again, owning a piece of land on the metaverse, okay, very well, but that's quite of an old notion of ownership, okay? Because we know that owning an apartment, then it's valuable because it will appreciate in time, and I can do stuff in there, I can make it commercial whatsoever. But that's an old mentality. Can we really apply the exact same mentality to the metaverse? I think the metaverse should actually be a place where you get experiences. If I would be able to have a mind-blowing experience, like, I don't know, taking mushrooms, smoking a joint, like taking opium or whatever, and go like, whoa, oh, ayahuasca, let's talk about ayahuasca. Imagine I decalcify my pineal gland, and all of a sudden I'm like, whoo, go connected to like the 11th dimension. Bloody hell, I'll pay $100,000 for that every time.
And people do pay that kind of money to go and have that kind of an experience in real
no,
life.
for sure, for sure. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, these experiences are way better than anything that they offer on Metaverse. So the Metaverse is really piggybacking on a very old idea of ownership that we are familiar with in this real world. They should maybe focus on, like, why don't we charge people, for outstanding experience? That I think that would be my kick. I would spend money for experience. I think everybody would spend money for experiences. And as a matter of fact, I don't own any land on any metaverse, because I want the metaverse to not be what the real world is. I want it to be different. I want it to be something else. I don't want the metaverse to be governed by the same, ancient ideas and purpose as this real world. Otherwise, I keep living here. I'm fine here, But if I want to go to the metaverse, I want it to be fun. I want it to be exciting, and I want it to be outstanding experiences, and not just go like, flex around that I bought a piece of land on the metaverse. I don't know. Call me a hater, but I don't think anybody would give a fuck, really.
I think they did at the beginning. If you got into some of those projects at the very beginning, you were very happy. And I know there's lots of people that have made a lot of money flipping pieces of land, etc.
And you know what?
But
they made a lot of money when they went to go do ayahuasca. They went to, right? That's why.
They're now sat with their shaman somewhere in Navajo country. Listen, Alexis, this has been great. I think we've covered a couple of things that were really good and good conversations, and a lot to think about. And I think what you've said there, if you've listened to this episode and if you've got any thoughts on what you think a killer use case or a killer app would be for the metaverse and for that idea,
let us know.
World, please let us know, because we're really interested in this. We want to see how many people have got different plans and ideas and thoughts, and also to see whether or not this tracks, right? Like Alexis said at the beginning, this will either be our last ever episode or the story for the metaverse is only just beginning, and I'm hoping it's only just beginning.
Excellent. All right, Chris. Well, thank you very much for having me again. Let's continue. It's a lot of fun. I'm loving this. I can't wait for next week. We should have we should have someone on the podcast. We should bring in someone.
I've got someone. I'm not going to say who yet, but I've got someone in mind.
Fantastic.
I'm hoping they're going to come on board, and we'll have a guest for our third episode. But anyway, for now, thank you so much for listening, everybody. If you have enjoyed the episode, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. Listening to this on your favorite podcast episode, again, thank you so much for listening. We'll see you again next week.
Fantastic. Bye.